The question that will be answered only way later in the Maimer. So it's really not really Sanagir though. But the question he asked was that what emerges after a whole analysis is that as a preparation for Matan Torah, which is about breaking boundaries, so we would expect, and there's indications of that from the Medrash. Actually, the Medrash says otherwise. We'd expect that the Avodah would be not the Avodah of refining the Nefesh Bahamis, which means getting involved in its world, in our conscious world, and redirecting the pleasure seeker that the Nefesh Bahamis is from physical things exclusively to Yiddishkeit. That's what Bidur of Nefesh Bahamis means, that you channel its drive. Nefesh Bahamis is essentially a pleasure seeker, not a bad fellow, just wants pleasure. So if the Nefesh Bahamis can be convinced that the most pleasurable, enjoyable life is a life of discipline, of exercise. To use an example of exercise, on the one hand, we resist exercise, but in the end, we're happy we do it. Who's happy? The Nefesh Halikis. Nefesh Bahamis is happy. The Guf is happy. So if the Nefesh Bahamis can be convinced, and doesn't take that much, that the most beautiful life, family life, naches, a business environment that is honest, etc., that's the most fulfilling life, then that's how you elevate Nefesh Bahamis. So we would think, however, that that's not the Achana from Matan Torah. Achana Matan Torah is bittul, is b'chol ma'itcha, is skafi, is breaking Nefesh Bahamis, is going beyond limits. And yet it's clear from the Medrash that is tmimus, that would add a perfection. But the Ikar Avodah is the bitter itself. The words of the Maimer, the Nefesh Halikis is mislabish, not breaks, but is invested in the Nefesh Bahamis. And that's what precipitates the Gilui of Matan Torah Anochi. That's altogether surprising. What? I'm missing something? No. Okay, so that was the question we're left with. And now starts the heart of the Maimer Eish Daled. We even say, Behektim Ashakosov, will understand all of the above by prefacing that which he says as follows. And this is going to be elaborated upon for reams of chapters, deeper and deeper. As far as I'm aware, this is one of the deepest Maimorim, period.
What was the question we were left with? What was the question we were left with at the end of it?
I just said it, I'll say it again.
No, just the last.
The Kuda is that we would think the Avodah would be B'chol Ma'itcha, which is breaking the Nefesh Bahamis. That would be the Ikar Achon of Matan Torah. It's not. That's Tmimus, that adds Shleimus. The Ikar Avodah is the Birur, being mislabish, invested in the world Nefesh Bahamis, convincing him in his world that Yiddishkeit is the way to go. We wouldn't think that's, how is that a Hachana to Asher Tzisicham Beres Mitzrayim? Which is about transcendence. Yeah. Okay, Dalit. Understand this by first prefacing that which is written in the Pasuk in Mishlei. Kamayim aponim leponim, just like the water reflects the face that's shown to it. Kain leva adam la'adam, so to the heart of a person, to another person. So the simple meaning is that if you show love, or whatever emotion you show for that matter, you will get it in response. In the same way that whatever image, whatever face is facing the water is reflected back. So too the heart of another person is reflected back to what is projected by the other. But that's the simple meaning. Chassidus explains the lev ha'adam la'adam. When we speak about the pasuk, talks about the heart of one person to another, one adam to another adam. It's not just referring to as in the pshat level to people, meaning The level Adam ba'avosi lachaveda, that if a person loves his fellow, so then avas chaveda elav, he arouses a responsive love in return. In addition to that, the pasuk is obviously speaking about a virtuous relationship, so it's a relationship of love. Elogam al odam atachten v'odam elyon. We're also talking about mortal man and the supernal man. Who's the supernal man? It's the Eibishter. Why is he called the Odam Elyon? Because God manifests himself through the 10 spheres, which we mirror, and that's the Odam Elyon, because he wants a relationship with us. And this Odam Elyon sits atop the throne, which sits atop the Merkava, the divine chariot, as described by the Nevi'im, Yeshaya and Yecheskel. So, Odam Elyon. So now we're talking about who are the two Adams, earthly man and the supernal man Hashem. Meaning now, therefore, the way that we serve here, the way our Avodah is, namely, our awakening, our reaching out, so we elicit a corresponding response from above, an arousal from above, an awakening from above, a response from above. Meaning, God responds now, the Adam Elyon now responds to the Adam Atachten, precipitated by our connection to him. And that's the meaning, like the water reflects the face that is shown to where it's facing it. Okay, so that's what it says, it's Bechlal. The Rebbe now adds a profound nuance. Shadim in the Leva Adam L'Adam, that the comparison between Leva Adam L'Adam, we're comparing one heart to the other. The Maim upon him, why are we comparing it to water? Why do we need an analogy? Just state the fact that if you show love to a fellow, you get love and response. You need a moshel. So difficult. So what's the point of the moshel of the water is to convey the following. I just want to tell you from my recollection of the Maimer, the answer to this question is deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah, and there's more if we need. Maimer. So what is it? What's to be conveyed by the end of the Mayim? The Kemosh b'Mayim aponim leponim. Just like with water. That which appears to the person. Why is it that when you look into the water, you see your own reflection back, or whatever's reflected? Will it be? Because by looking at the water, by facing it, nasim, we actually effect, he adds in brackets, nirim, it appears. Now this is going to be the whole subject really here is, how is the water affected? There is an image there. What does it mean? This is the nuance that's going to be addressed. So now let's begin our journey. So he's saying, first of all, that by facing the water, so this makes, but then he adds in brackets, near him it appears. Now by saying that already, he's saying there isn't actually the image in the water. But let's leave that untapped at this point. So Nasim Nirim, there appears Ba'amayim in the water, Tzuras Haponim, Hamistakelis Behem, the image of the face that's facing it. So it's in the water, and then Vitzurazun Nidis Achakach La'odom Mistakel, then that image now appears back to the person. So as we understand, what happens is that light travels from the face that's facing the water, and that image is now in the water, and then light travels back, travels back from the image in the water, and I see it. Yeah? We're clear on that? That's level one. So this is therefore adding, this is giving us insight here. Cain who believe Adam, so too in the relationship between Adam and Adam. What's the nuance we're getting here that we wouldn't get without the marshal? It's this. This that this whole process begins by us serving Hashem from below to above. So this causes a response that Hashem responds back to us. How does this dynamic, or what is really happening here is we actually have an effect there. Our avodah ascends there to the supernal man. It's not like we do. God is observing it and responds in kind. Not an observation from the distance, as it were. What we do is impression kavayochel on him. That's what the story, the Moishe of the water is telling us. My image is in the water, and then it's reflected back. It's reflected back because it's there in the water. Same to also Lamaila, the our Avodah ascends into the supernal man to Hashem. And through this we impression ourselves, dugmas, a likeness of our Avodah there in the divine, in the Adam alien. Nase boy, we've affected in him. Translation: dugmas ingin, what we have given, our love, our Avodah has become nase boy, affected in him. And then it's drawn back. That which has been made in the Adam alien is now reflected back to us from above to below. Big chiddush. That, we're clear, and that's conveyed by the marshal. Because without the marshal, it doesn't mean that the person has been changed by you. He's just responding. He sees what you've done, he observes it, and he responds in kind. No, the nuance is he responds in kind because you've affected him. You've elicited that response. You've elicited it by what you've done affecting him. As opposed to, let's make it clearer, he sees what you've done and he says, I should do the same thing back because, you're getting love from someone. It's only right that you give love back. So the decision to give the love back is still me. What precipitates it because you're a nice guy. No, the love that I give back, actually, you made in me. You made this love, and I'm giving it, and therefore I'm reflecting it back. That's the nuance. Not a in-between step of I should be loving back. I've been affected by you. And you can't help then give the love back. It's not a decision. Not the right thing to do. And the Rabbi has even more into this V'yashloima. Analyzing the example of the water. This that the image of the person. Before we go further, the underlying tension, which I would get, it's going to be addressed in the mind bit is, so God changes. This is really the whole tension here. So we're actually affecting. So that's this nuance that's going to be addressed. Yes, no, simultaneously. So let's begin. The journey starts with the Lohosif. And I see in the harder also. No, it's later harder. Okay. Well, Lohosif, the Moshel Amayim, in the Moshel of the Mayim, this that the image of the person appears in the water. It appears that way to the viewer. The person's face is not in the water. He's not there. So therefore, applying this back to the Nimshal, through our Avodah, now this tension begins. Nasa, we effect. And footnote 27 right away. It's not an actual change in Hashem, but it's still nasa. How do we reconcile that? It's there, but no change. Okay, fact. How to reconcile that intellectually? This is what this Maimber, I think, is going to help us understand. But the fact is, al yedei v'des odom atachlan nasa dugmas inyin zeb odom ha'elyon. But now he's saying, hold on, whoa. He's saying here that in the nimshal, it's more than the water. Your face is not in the water. But in the nimshal, nasa, but he adds in the brackets, no change, but still, nasa, dugmas inyan zeb odom elyon, what you have done, our avodah, creates this in the odom elyon, the way it's not just because it appears so. So let's unpack this. So the water, when you're looking at your face reflected in the water, somebody else standing next to you doesn't see it. Or looking at the same water from a different perspective is not going to see it even. Which means it's not really there, the water. It just appears to you. But Lamaila, no. Lamaila, no change, but effect. So the Lamaila, it's more than the marshal of the water. That's the Lohisif. Let's see it again, make sure we're right. The marshal Amayim, or action neither came in the Nimshel, the Avodah, the Odom Atachtan Nase. It actually happens in the Odom Elyon. Not only does it appear that way, again, but no change. Okay, we have to reconcile that. Let's continue. So far, so good. More or less. More than less. Yeah, okay. Just like we said that with the pasuk speaking about the heart of one person to another. The pasuk doesn't just mean that literally elegant baruchnius, as we said. It means also baruchnius, namely Adam Elyon, Adam Atachtan. Who are the two Adams here? Supernal man and mortal man. And it's also true. It's also true of the beginning of the pasuk. It's not just a marshal. The beginning of the pasuk is also talking about us and Elikus. Upon him, like the face of the water, like the face is reflected in the water. Shemedaba, that here too, it also has a ruchnistic dimension that loidak b'mayim kipshutom. It's not just literal water. Elegam b'mayim elyon, in the supernal water. What's a supernal water? Hainu, definition of divine water. Water is the simplest liquid and it's transparent and so on. Hainu hapshitus de'erein sof shelamayle mitziyur adam. Water means the simplicity of the infinite before God manifests as a adam, which are the 10 spheres. In a word, the Erein Sof. The Erein Sof, that's the Mayim Halyonim. Now, having said that, the Inyan, so what now is the meaning of like the face reflected in the water? It means now that even though the infinite is absolutely simple, the absolute simplicity, it's not a composite, not made up of any form or parts. It's poshet, means it's pure and transcendent in the absolute pshitus, simplicity in the most virtuous sense, beyond definition. Vein shaykh by tzir the svidus, and it's not shaykh if not for the tzimtzum. It's not shaykh at all that there should be a form there of svidus, of chachma, bina, and so on. Because that's the way Ein Sof is naturally, utterly transcendent. Because the big news is they halos man, through the ascent of man stands for anybody. Mayin, Mamlukvim, feminine waters, that's Malchus, that's us, Neshamas Yisrael. Das Sviris of the Sviris, the kids of our Aveda, Loyer Insof, through our ascent, and we reach out and connect to the Infinite One. Nasim Boy Sviris. Unbelievable words here. We create an impression, Sviris in the Loyer Insof. What are these Sviris? Es Sviris Hagenuzes. This is a
Hour is 30.
Yeah, and let's finish. Yeah. Take a breath. This is referred to as the SS Sviris Hagnuzes. Read a bit further. Yes, Sviris Hagnuzes, and what Gnuzes means hidden, as opposed to the 10 SS Sviris Hagluyus, which are the 10 Sviris of Atzilus. Yes, Sviris Hagnuzes, same Kumbai Moker, they are like the source. Now, we have to understand why he says Kumbai Moker, not Moker, like the source. They're the source. Anybody wants to venture why he says Kumay Marker? In Pashtus, because they're really totally beyond the actual manifested 10 spheres. So ultimately it's traceable there, but it's not just a direct, easy projection or Ilav Olul. SS Spheres Gnuzas will not produce SS Spheres Aglus if God doesn't intend that they should. But ultimately it's traceable there. Why? Because Nisaved did a he wants everything to be manifest. At any rate, so the SS Spheres Agnusim Kemei Marker, they are like the source, from which the 10 manifested spheres are drawn. Okay, let's have a look at Order 30. How can we say, an obvious question, how can we say that it's our Avodah that impressions in the Eir Ein Sof, our being, which is, we're made up of 10 Keiches HaNefesh, and hence we impression in the Eir Ein Sof Kavayochel, as a Sviris Agnuzas, but they precede our Avodah. It's all part of the whole process of creation. All the Mashalim Chassidus of the fire in the coal, the fire in the rock, that's before it's there, but it's completely not discernible. Produces a spark, it means that the energy is there. Various other Mashalim. But the point is that they're before our Avodah. So he answers. Even though these 10 hidden spheres precede the 10 spheres Agluyas, and we're saying, we just finished saying, that the 10 manifested ones come from the 10 hidden ones, and we create the 10 hidden ones. Answer that they are lost. That's because the Eibushter entertained their Avodah. As we learned in previous Memorim. See, Ayin basis on. Halos Mamanebe means the elevation of our Avodah within God. That means that God is already precipitating our Avodah and therefore sets the whole thing up, as it were. But it's really because of our Avodah. Really, that's a portion of the Medrash, where they wish to, the Min Nimlach, with who did he consult before the process of creation? The Avodah of Tzadikim, which is the Avodah of Yidden, our Halos Man. But that was because of his precipitation, as it were. But what is he? The cause still remains us. It's just he anticipates that. It's still us. So it's not a stid to what we're saying. Yeah. Let's continue the square brackets. So what did he just say now? He said that Eir Ein Sof is Pashut B'tachlis Apshitus. It's not Shaykh to have Esses Vidas. Naturally. Then along comes a Yid and does his Avodah, and the Eir Ein Sof becomes impressioned by us. God becomes impressioned by us on this very deep internal self. And that then is the source of his manifesting 10 spheres. In simple language, this means what it's saying is God is saying this whole Seiderish Talshalis and the whole Bria, the whole thing is, well, why? Because you touch me and I want you to touch me. That's the whole That's where it starts. That's the origin. Now in brackets, let's observe now the two things in the physical water marshal. One, first, what you see in the water is the face that's projected to the water, and that doesn't start in the water. That starts with the person. That is the model of coming from below to above. And then that image that's in the water appears back to the person. And that's but it's only because there's that impression in the water. And we just said now that the water is the Ein Sof. So the physical marshal is conveying what we just said.
Before you go further, a question.
Huh?
Before you go further, a question. When you're saying Esther Spheres Hagnuzis,
Yeah.
where are you pegging it in the map?
In Ein Sof.
Not in Kesser.
No. Ein Sof. That's exactly what he said. In like the mush of the water is pasha b'tachlis hapshitus before you come along, and now your image is there. Yet in the ha'oreh, no change, but it's there. Nasa boy. In this Ein Sof.
Before Kesser.
Higher than Kesser.
Okay, I'm saying I just want to clarify.
What?
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, you know,
Oh,
the
got
deepest levels of the divine. You touch me in the deepest way.
Beyond Dak?
Yeah, about it. Beyond the Staushalas, period. He ain't shaykh by tzir. He defined the Ein Sof. It's not a shaykh to have any form or limitation. True. But you do it for me.
So even before the Tzimtzum.
Yeah, sure. Before the Tzimtzum.
Okay.
So what you're asking is, look, so you're asking, so what's Esses Sfiras HaKnosos doing Lifnei HaTzimtzum? They don't belong there. He said that. It's not shaykh. They belong there because a Yid gives it. And he serves with his limitations. So those limitations, that seer is impressioned in the most deepest, intimate part of the divine, the pshitas of the Ein Sof. Okay, the journey is just beginning. It doesn't end there, friends. We could stop here for the rest of our life and be inspired. I told you the word, some of you weren't here, so I'll just repeat it again, that I heard recently, B'Shem Rabbi, that be'emes, a person only needs to learn one maimon his entire life. To understand this maimon, you have to learn 1,000 maimon. Because every maimon is Eibishter. Just to continue the words, and the word libaris means to create, and also means to be healthy, gesund. It can be a gesunde chassid b'mayim berechad. And I want to mention again to you, because I'm so taken by it. You got to read this book, Samarkand, by Hillel Zaltzman. It's a new edition now. It's called Under the Watchful Eye of the King, Samarkand. And I'm reading about Rabbi Kechain. Rabbi Kechain was Chaim. Who else did the Rebbe say to wear 4 pairs of tefillin aside from him? Who else?
I don't know.
Who?
Don't know.
I don't think anybody else. Not that I know. Rabbi was l'chala pachas a beinani ulei tzadik. Don't know, but beinani. Read the stories. His Velvel's elder Zayde, uncle, I think Zayde. Came out of Russia in the 70s. But here's just one part. I read last night. This is Rabbi Chaim. Do you remember him? He said Rabbi Chaim. I didn't know. As a kid and teenager, he loved money. And he became wealthy as a teenager. Moshe was a handler, a dealer, and he was revealed this, I guess, by Fabring. He loved money so much, he's so obsessed with it. He used to kiss money. He used to kiss the ruble. And this fellow became Rebbe Kechain at 14 or 15. What's becoming of me? And you read how he was, how the KGB pursued him and persecuted him. He was sentenced to be killed. Firing squad, no less. He was 6 years in the Meshulavin house in Samarkand. I don't want to give it away. Every page, every page is a movie, a story. I'm really highly recommend this book. I think I told you there's the back they have people that wrote. So there's Russian literary critics and whatever. One guy writes, this book should be a movie. And I'm saying every page is a movie. Not much every page. How could they convey this in a movie? So I'm encouraging you to read the book. Simchas Torah with Berkah Chayin in Samarkand.
Now that you said the story, let me learn the mimer.
Huh?
Now that you already shared the story, let me learn the mimer.
I apologize, Chaim. Sorry.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Tzarich lahav. Tzarich lahav. If they understand, let's look at the question. Bizesh and then Makamayim. But the truth, I'm afraid to learn the mimer because it's so. I'm pushing up later. Let's just understand it properly. I'm stalling. Tzarich lahavin. Bizesh and then Makamayim. Aponim leponim kin lev adam la'adam mashma. Oh, comes the Gewalt again. New one's kasha. From the pasuk itself, when you give a moshel, yeah. So the moshel is easy to understand than the nimshel, correct? So the inference is to understand the water reflecting the face. That's more obvious. Minyan leva adam then the point of the moshel, the nimshel, in the simple pshat in the pasuk, the heart of one person to another, adam la'adam. As we explain it right now, it's not. The first part of the pasuk is a much bigger chiddush. What we're saying now is that the first part of the pasuk is talking about pshitus, the mayim, the water. Now the incomparable gulf between the pshitus, the Ein Sof, and tzir, which is us. We're tzir. That's the distance is far greater. From the distance, the incomparability of the Melian is already a tzir. The Melian is already a tzilus. So the distance between Adam Atach and Adam Elyon is very great. But it's not as great as the distance between Adam Atachton and the Pshitas of Ein Sof, where we impression as a Sviras Agnusis. So it doesn't fit with the Pshat and the Pasuk. You're giving, the first thing is like this, which is, you understand, more readily. The Yesh is also that way, the second thing. But the first thing is a bigger Chiddush. Clear in the Kasha. That you do is elaborating in the question. As it's known, the Ramak, there's a greater than the distance of Asiyah to Atzilus is then Atzilus agabe Ein Sof, because Atzilus is a tzir, and Asiyah action is a very defined tzir, but it's still the world of tzir, the world of finite. In other words, 1 in a million and a billion are very distant, but much closer, incomparably, than a billion to infinite. But there's absolutely no relationship. So, like the above, we have a question. This that through our avodah we cause it seer, this form of impression, as it were the Eibishter without being, and we create as a Sviras Agnuzes. That's far more novel. That we can affect Atzilus. That's the same realm ultimately. Yes, question's clear. And he concludes the question of And the fact that the pasuk says, "K'mayim aponim," Cain live all the mashma. The fact that he puts first the water statement and then lev adam. Inference is, mayim pon the ponim of pashat yos. It's more obvious that it's not. That's a way bigger chiddush. And let's see, Hora 32 tomorrow, Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay. So we told everybody a story. So there's Yotze the nice. Everybody have a wonderful day. Psudas Tovos.